I was 10 years old when my father told me, over a bowl of cold cereal, that another family would be a better place for me. He said it calmly, as if he were discussing a business arrangement. In that moment, I stopped feeling like a daughter and started feeling like a problem being transferred somewhere else. It took me to decades and a fortune I never expected to inherit before I understood that his judgment had never defined my worth. My name is Avery Dalton, and I grew up outside Seattle in a house where love was measured by performance. My father, Leonard Dalton, managed a successful financial office and believed every person should prove their value through results. My mother, Evelyn, kept the house immaculate and avoided conflict whenever possible. My older brothers Connor and Reed were praised for their sports trophies and high grades, while my own accomplishments usually passed with little notice. I spent much of my childhood trying to become the kind of child my father would admire. I studied late into the night, joined activities I did not enjoy, and copied the interests of my brothers in the hope that I would finally be included. My mother encouraged me to learn practical household skills, telling me they would make me useful one day. Even then, I understood that usefulness was being treated as more important than simply being loved. Everything changed when my mother became pregnant again. My father announced with complete confidence that the baby would be a boy and prepared the nursery, as though his prediction were already fact. When my youngest brother, Nolan, was born, my father celebrated him as the future of the family. I was 10 years old, standing in the corner of the hospital room, and I understood with painful clarity that I had become unnecessary in the household. A few months later, my father delivered the sentence that would shape the rest of my life. During breakfast, he said that arrangements had been made for me to live with another family. My mother kept her eyes on her plate and said nothing. I packed a single suitcase that afternoon, folding clothes beside my favorite books and a worn stuffed rabbit. I also tucked in a Christmas photograph because I needed proof that I had once belonged somewhere. That evening, my parents drove me to a foster care intake center downtown. A woman with a clipboard took my suitcase, and my parents left without turning around. I spent my first night on a narrow cot in a room that smelled of disinfectant. Lying awake in the dark, I made a private promise to myself. I would never again beg someone to choose me, and I would never forget the feeling of being abandoned by the people who were supposed to protect me. The years that followed were a blur of temporary homes and careful survival. Some foster families were overwhelmed, some were indifferent, and a few were openly interested only in the financial support they received. I learned to become quiet, helpful, and emotionally invisible. School became my refuge because grades were predictable and did not require me to trust anyone. My caseworker, Melissa Hart, was the first adult who noticed that I was hiding behind my achievements. When Melissa introduced me to a widower named Samuel Pierce, I expected another temporary arrangement. Instead, Samuel welcomed me into his home with a patience I had never experienced. He showed me a spare bedroom with bare walls and asked what color I would like to paint it. No adult had ever asked for my opinion about my own space before. That simple question loosened something inside me that had been tight for years. Samuel never demanded perfection from me. When nightmares woke me, he would sit with me in the kitchen and make hot chocolate. When schoolwork overwhelmed me, he would sit nearby and let me think through problems at my own pace. He built a bookshelf for my growing collection of novels and told me that books deserved a proper home. Slowly, without grand speeches or dramatic gestures, he taught me what steady love looked like. As I grew older, Samuel encouraged my interest in architecture. He took me to historic neighborhoods and pointed out how light, space, and design could shape the way people felt inside a building. I began sketching houses and community spaces in my notebooks, and he bought me pencils and graph paper without questioning whether my dream was practical. For the first time, an adult was investing in my future simply because he believed in me. High school brought new support as well. My friend Leah Carter refused to let me disappear into the background, and therapy helped me understand that my biological parents' rejection reflected their limitations, not my value. When I received an acceptance letter from a prestigious architecture program, Samuel framed it and placed it in the living room. He introduced me to visitors as his daughter, and hearing that word attached to me with pride changed something fundamental inside me. By my early 30s, I had built a successful career designing community centers and affordable housing projects throughout the Pacific Northwest. Samuel attended every major presentation and celebrated each accomplishment as though it were his own. Then, during one award ceremony, I noticed his hands trembling. A few weeks later, doctors diagnosed him with advanced pancreatic cancer. He faced the news with remarkable calm, choosing to spend his remaining time at home surrounded by familiar comforts. Caring for Samuel during his illness was one of the hardest and most meaningful periods of my life. Our days became filled with medication schedules, quiet conversations, and evenings spent reading together. One rainy night, he took my hand and told me to build something that would outlast both of us. I held him as his breathing slowed, and when he passed away, grief and purpose arrived together. He had given me a family, and now I needed to honor that gift. Several weeks later, I met with his attorney expecting to discuss a modest estate. Instead, I learned that Samuel had quietly accumulated significant wealth through investments and the sale of a business years earlier. He had left me his home, his assets, and the majority of his estate, totaling more than $27 million. I was stunned not only by the amount, but by the trust he had placed in me to use it wisely. After news of the inheritance became public, my biological father appeared at my door for the first time in 20 years. He arrived with a lawyer and spoke about blood ties, family history, and the importance of reconciliation. I hired a private investigator before agreeing to meet with him, and the report confirmed what I suspected: financial troubles, gambling debts, and years of estrangement from my brothers. In the conference room where we finally met, I told him that he had surrendered his claim to me the day he chose to abandon me. I offered to pay for rehabilitation treatment, but I made it clear that my inheritance was not his legacy. Instead of letting Samuel's wealth sit untouched, I established the Pierce Foundation for Family Futures. We built affordable housing for young adults aging out of foster care and created a community center that offered counseling, job training, and mentorship. Walking through the completed building before opening day, I remembered every temporary bed I had slept in as a child. At the ribbon cutting, I told the crowd that family is not determined by blood alone. Family is built through choice, commitment, and the willingness to stay when staying is difficult. Samuel had chosen me, and through this foundation, his choice would continue opening doors for others who needed a place to belong.